Okay, today we start a new chapter, chapter 10, the nature of communications. For all the technical stuff that we will learn in this book, all the nomenclatures and definitions and procedures on how to perform mediumship. I think this chapter is the one that, if you forget absolutely everything in this book, this is the one that we should never forget. This is perhaps some of the teachings here, perhaps the most important thing that the doctrine can teach us in regarding to mediumship. Again, mediumship does not belong to spiritism. Kardec did not invent it. Mediumship existed from the beginning of our existence. It is practiced in many different spiritualist groups, but perhaps this is one major differentiation of spiritism and other spiritualist groups that work with mediumship. I think it's very, very important to internalize these messages here for those who want to work and understand mediumship. So the nature of communications, who's going to do the reading for us? It's a very short chapter, no hurry.
Okay. 133. We have stated that every effect revealing the act of a free will as its cause, and no matter how insignificant it may be, proves that such a cause is in fact an intelligent one. Thus, the simple movement of a table which has responded to our thought, or which displays an intentional character, will be regarded as an intelligent manifestation. If table moving were all that happened, we would not be nearly as interested in the matter. However, we have received proof that there is more than simple physical action in these phenomena. Any practical usefulness that we could derive from them would be zero or at least very limited. However, everything changes when this intelligence reaches a point where a regular and continuous exchange of ideas may ensue. At such point, they can no longer be treated as simple intelligent manifestations, but as true communications. The means at our disposal nowadays that enable us to receive them are as extensive, explicit, and rapid as those we have with one another.
Thanks. A few important points over here. We studied last week when we studied instinct intelligence, that Spirit told us that one of the characteristics of intelligence, of intelligent individuals, is the perception of others. And in order to obey commands, one must recognize the perception of others. Okay. Intelligence also, we learned that precedes free will. Again, free will does not derive from intelligence, but intelligence precedes free will. That we have to have a minimum of intelligence to be able to act on free will. Okay? So Kardec goes through all these things over here to make the point that if an object is moving freely, it doesn't make it intelligent. If an inanimate object is moving at the command of someone, now there is intelligence. There is a recognition of the other, and there is the ability to follow those commands. Since we know that an inanimate object does not have intelligence, a table does not have intelligence, so they have to have an intelligent force behind of that table, behind of that chair, or whatever is following our commands. And that was the basis of Kardec starting his investigation and coming to the conclusion of the existence of spirits, intelligent beings that is just studied in the first part, right? Now, if those intelligent beings, spirits, follow commands and move the tables or move a chair or do this or do that, establish a manifestation, an intelligent phenomenon, a manifestation. Now, if that intelligent being behind of the table, behind of the chair, interacts on a back and forth of expression of our intelligence, now establish communication. If now I'm able to command, and by command is any interaction, or I ask the spirit or the chair a question, and the spirit is able to provide that answer and even put a question in return, then it's more than a manifestation. A manifestation itself already proves the existence of intelligent beings without a physical body. But we can go much, much greater, and that is one of the greatest value of spiritism, is that we can establish communications, which is a back and forth of of ideas, which is much greater than just manifestation. A manifestation happens, and that's it. In the communication, there is an interaction, there's a back and forth of intelligences, of thoughts, of things. And that's very important for us to understand, to differentiate manifestation from communication. Okay? And we will see why is that important soon.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. If we have fully understood the infinite variety of spirits as to their intelligence and morality, according to the spirit hierarchy, the Spirits Book number 100, we will easily comprehend the differences in their communications. Their communications must necessarily reflect the nobility or baseness of their ideas, their wisdom or ignorance, and their vices or virtues. In other words, their communications no more resemble one another than the communications of people of illiterate and more educated cultures among humans. The different types of communications can be classified into four main categories. According to their predominant characteristics, they may be crude, frivolous, serious, or instructive. Instructive, yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Mhm.
Now we established that there are communications and there are manifestations. And we're going to leave manifestations aside. We had enough of manifestations. Now going to go to the more important, the more valuable thing, that is communications. Okay? If the spirits are able to communicate and express to them their ideas, their thoughts, their feelings, their objectives, you should be able to measure, and I use the word measure very loosely here, the quality of that spirit, moral and intellectual progress. Kardec comes ahead to say that we can pretty much identify the progress of the spirits by its language. Okay. The same way that amongst ourselves incarnate, after have a conversation with someone, for some time, we can pretty much measure if this person is well educated by the choice of words, the expansion of its lexicon, by the content of the subjects the spirit, the individual chooses to converse. We can have a pretty good idea of if it's an educated person, or is a person with have an advanced school or less, or if it's a person, it's someone with some degree of moral progress. The same thing with the communications. Since the spirits are we without a physical body, in the spiritual world, there will be spirits of different levels in the pathway of progress, as defined by the hierarchy of spirits they're going to see yet. And it's too bad that I haven't seen yet in the Spirit's book to corroborate with what we're talking about here. But in the spiritual world, we have it just like here. The spirits are different level of moral intellectual progress. And you'll be able to kind of identify where each of those spirits find themselves through their communications. And so Kardec, you four main groups of characteristics of communications: crude, frivolous, serious, and instructive. We said always that a science should have its own terminology, should have its own way of identifying things. And Kardec proposes here four boxes where you can throw in communication that you receive. Should those be those names, crude, frivolous, serious, instructive, be terminology to be used by us spiritists as when we qualify, so to say, communications? Personally, I like it. Okay, because I like things to have to be defined, to have a way for us to communicate, to converse. When I come and say, well, you receive a crude communication, anyone who had read this book, had this passage, you understand, you know what I'm talking about. And every time that I say, we receive a serious communication, anyone have read this book, we know what we have not, what we are talking about. So I like to have names, terminologies for everything. Questions, comments? Okay, so let's see what defines, what makes communications to be crude.
Crude communications. Crude communications are those containing expressions that shock decorum. They could only come from spirits of the lowest orders who are still soiled by all the impurities of matter, and there is nothing different about them than the expressions used by depraved and crude human beings. Any person with a minimum amount of sensitivity is repulsed by them, for they are trivial, ignoble, obscene, insolent, arrogant, and malevolent, and even impetus, depending on the character of the spirit.
Okay, so it starts with perhaps the lowest of all the communications that we may receive. And of course, we're talking about here spirits in a very low level of moral progress, if any. Okay, and we see here that we are talking about really about moral progress here, not talk as much as about intellectual progress. A well or somewhat intellectual spirit may have very low moral qualities, and when they come in and provide communications, they may come in that form. The ones that is completely deprived of any sense of social decorum, the one that is full of arrogance, the one that is malevolent, impious, the ones that have no sense of honor. Okay, there's no sense of humility. The ones who lack completely any kind of reverence and lack any kind of proper respect to oneself. And if you don't have respect to yourself, naturally don't have respect to others. So it's perhaps the lowest moral level spirits may provide this kind of communications, which again may not be the lowest level of intellectual, but certainly moral. Comments, questions?
Hey, Elmo,
Yeah.
have you seen any of this?
Have I seen of this?
Yeah, I mean, were you, in a session or in a meeting where you could, hear or see something like this?
Yeah, I think so. I think quite often we see spirits coming in with a complete lack of decorum or with a higher degree of arrogance and malevolence, saying it's going to kill us and destroy all of us. And who are we to talk to them? And they are so superior to us. And I think we've seen that quite often, actually.
Yeah, and
Well,
actually, Renato, they don't express. The mediums tell us that what they wanted to say is not what the mediums say, because they control the message, right?
Yeah, that would be my second point. Yes, exactly that. I mean, very often the spirits will say, I cannot say what I want to say. I cannot do what I want to do because of the proper development, education of those mediums who receive those spirits, put some kind of restraint. And we as doctrinators, as dialoguers with us, you can express all your feelings, you can express all your thoughts, but we limit the choices of words and the behavior to keep this civilized. But you can express all your thoughts, you can express all your anger, but you should use, we will use words that is proper for this ambient. So yeah, if the medium is not properly educated, we would hear things a lot worse than what we hear at times. And not only hear, perhaps feel it, because they could even attack us physically.
but because sometimes we hear that the spirits say they would not allow me to say what I wanted to say. So it's not only the media, right? There's also the benefactors of the place that would not allow the spirit to express whatever feeling or whatever sentiment it wants to express, right?
And I think the expression, the words, the the workers cannot really control. It cannot, you know, that comes from the medium. But when they say they, yeah, certainly some they say they are tied up. They say why they will tie me up and things like that. But I think in the choice of words, that comes from the medium.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
I think
Frivolous.
someone raise a hand here.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Elmo, it's Sue. I have a question. Is it now okay?
Yes, please.
I've been trying to learn about these kinds of things for a long time. It's been hard to find information because of my spiritual obsession. And one thing I've come across in the American New Age community is that, well, there's a sense in those communities that only love exists, and the spirits that are going to communicate to us are only love and light. And there's a phenomenon that they call false light entity, where a being in the spirit realm is pretending that they're of a different order than they are. And I've experienced a priest in one of the churches that was like that. He was pretending to be of God and to be communicating with high-level spirits, and I was attacked by demons that he was working with. You guys don't call it demons, but they were lower order spirits. And I'm just wondering if that's a phenomenon in spiritism where you're in the mediumship meeting and there are beings of a lower order who are pretending to be of a higher order. They're trying to hoodwink you and manipulate you by pretending. Or is that taken care of because of the way you have the meeting set up? How does that work? I pass.
Okay. The spirits are us without a physical body. If I end up in the spirit world tomorrow, I don't become an angel. I continue to be what I am with all my vices, with all my goodness and bad and all that I have to learn. I'll continue to be what I am with all my objective and purposes in things that I want to do. That does not change just because now I don't have a physical body. In truth, by leaving this life behind this physical body, I become a lot more sensitive. All my senses are extremely augmented, and I might be able to have perception and all things that right now I'm very limited by this physical body. So there is a little change, but basically not that much in terms of my moral intellectual qualities. So those who are up to no good here likely go back to the spiritual world, continue to be up to no good. And those who are kicking the dogs here end up in the spiritual world, continue to kick the dogs. Okay? Taking consideration again that being free from this physical body may have some greater perception and improve a little bit only by not having this physical body anymore, but not that much. So in spiritism, it is fundamental that we understand that communications come from all kinds of spirits, the ones who are well educated and the ones that are not so well educated, and that's exactly what we are talking about here. Now, as we're going to see now in these frivol communications, anticipating a little bit, there are deceiving spirits. There are spirits that come in, there are the wolf dressed in sheep clothes. There are the false prophets, just as we have here in the incarnate. The false prophets in the physical world are bad. the false prophet in the spiritual world are even more dangerous because now we cannot identify them. Sometimes they can be very eloquent and no, even leads us to believe in falsehoods. And they may come in some spiritist meetings, even well done at spiritist meetings, because they also need help, because we cannot exclude them from the opportunity of learning or receiving some compassion or receive some vibrations of love. It is our responsibility as members of that meeting to be able to see the wolf inside of the sheep clothes. And that's what these stories, this book assists us to do. And this is the great value that I was talking about of the story of mediumship in spirituals, because it guides us to be able to make the differentiation and not to be trapped by those pretending spirits, as you mentioned. Did I answer your question?
Yes, very well. Thank you, Elmo.
I think what was missing, right, Elmo, is the communications that we receive in our meetings. Our meetings normally are the meetings what we call rescue. So it's all generally our spirits that are suffering spirits, struggling spirits that may be angry, maybe wants to attack us, but normally they are spirits in need of help and assistance. And we will receive all types of spirits there, from the ones that are suffering and just struggling, to the ones that are angry, to the ones that are deceiving. And that's also for us to learn, to educate ourselves how to separate between those that are communicating. But yes, these mentors, the spiritual directors of the meeting, they control what spirits can come and those that cannot. Spirits that are only going to come to disturb are generally prevented from coming to our meetings, unless we open ourselves, the group or the spiritual benefactors think it's a good opportunity for us to educate ourselves and to learn. But generally, they are kept outside of our meetings if they have nothing to contribute to the group or to the group of incarnates or discarnates.
Okay, any more questions?
Just wanted to say thank you, John. Thank you.
Okay. Frivolous communications. Frivolous communications are those from frivolous, mocking, or mischievous spirits who are more cunning than downright evil and who give no importance to anything they say. Since these communications have nothing improper about them, they please certain individuals who find them entertaining and who find satisfaction in useless conversations in which much is talked about, but nothing is actually said. These spirits sometimes let loose with witty and biting tirades, often mixing banal jokes with hard truths that nearly always hit with great accuracy. Frivolous spirits are the ones who swarm around us and use every opportunity to meddle in our spirit communications. Truth concerns them very little, and thus they feel a malicious pleasure in befuddling those who are weak and predisposed enough to believe their words. People who like this sort of communication naturally open themselves up to frivolous and deceiving spirits. Serious spirits stay away from them, as among us, serious men and women stay away from groups of irresponsible people.
Thanks.
I have a question, Elmo.
And
May I?
please.
Yeah, Elmo, as I'm reading this, it's really not different from our physical reality. You understand what I'm saying? Well, we are spirits, no? So you're gonna find people that are obscene, insolent, arrogant, malevolent, and you're gonna find those people that are frivolous and mocking other people. Am I making sense? That it's not only that it only pertains to the spirit or the communications. We could find those things everywhere here, no?
But yeah, that's what we are saying all along.
Yeah.
Spirits are us without a physical body. The spirit of
Exactly.
body does not define our moral intellectual qualities.
Yeah.
Once you leave the physical body, your moral intellectual qualities remains the same. So yeah, you're absolutely right. What are the frivolous we will consider frivolous individuals? How many of us we have a job that we go there to collect a paycheck? We don't really care, and we just care to get a paycheck at the end of the week or the bi-week of the month, whatever the case may be. And the rest of our daytime is to have of our time is to have a good time.
Yeah.
I mean, life is too short to be serious. Let's have fun and
Exactly.
enjoy, and that's it.
You hear that a lot.
And when you leave behind this physical body, do we change? We will continue the way we are. We continue to try to have fun and enjoy life as much as we can to the fullest, as they say. Those communications will be exactly like that, you know.
Exactly.
They'll be without a purpose, without any depth at all. I love when it says here, useless conversations in which much is talked but nothing is actually said. I absolutely love that. We will allow those individuals to talk, and then at the end of it, say, what is good about this?
Exactly.
It's nothing.
They do the
Nothing
talk
is
and they don't do the walk. Yeah.
right. It's full of words without any foundation, with anything that you can take home with. Now, if there are frivolous spirits, there are frivolous mediums. And frivolous mediums may get together and form a mediumship meeting, and they probably enjoy the companies of frivolous spirits and spend
Yes.
hours having a futile communications. One have to ask, why and what for? Right? So, of course, serious people will avoid them, and serious spiritists will put a very quick end to those communications and move on.
Mhm.
And again, an spiritist meeting, the type of the one that we have, that is of assistance, of rescue, we receive all kinds of spirits who have the minimum necessary to benefit from that communication. If the spirits come in and have to be a frivolous spirit, we will try to engage them in something more important, or something that is really meaningful to that spirit. And very often we try, you go nowhere. Then we have to end the conversation and move on. But we have to remember that those spirits are the one that needs help. Those spirits are the one that we have those kind of meetings for. It's for to help those. But you can take the horse to the water, but I cannot make them drink. So we will receive spirits of all kinds, frivolous or not. We will It is our responsibility to recognize it. It is our responsibility to do our best to engage them in something more important. But if it's going nowhere, maybe we didn't do a good job, or maybe they are just not really ready to take things a little bit more serious. Then we have to let it go. And perhaps educate yourself a little more to be more efficient in our project. Questions, comments? Okay, move on.
Serious communications. Serious communications are serious both as to subject and form. Every communication which does not display any frivolousness or crudeness and which has a useful purpose, even though perhaps of private interest only, is naturally serious. However, that does not mean that such communications are always without error, since serious spirits are not all equally enlightened. They are ignorant of many things, and they may be mistaken about them, though in good faith. That is why truly high order spirits constantly recommend that we submit all communications to the control of reason and the strictest logic. Hence, we must distinguish between communications that are truly serious and those that are erroneously serious, which is not always easy. For due to the seriousness of their language, certain presumptuous pseudo scholar spirits may attempt to impose the most wrong-headed ideas and the most absurd theories. In addition, to render them more acceptable and lend them more importance, they have no scruples about adoring themselves with the most respectable and even the most venerated names. This is one of the biggest obstacles faced by practical spiritism. We shall return to deal with this subject further on, giving it the development required by its importance. And at the same time, we shall shed light on the means of avoiding the danger of erroneous communications.
Okay. So here's the thing that I think is extremely relevant, extremely important when you deal with the so-called serious communications Kardec puts over here. So serious communications are serious both to subject and form. It's serious on the subject matter. What are we talking about? And it's serious on the form, how we present it. It is extremely important on both subject and form, because I can bring a subject. Let's say that it's going to talk about charity, but my form is completely deprived of charity. It's full of arrogance, is full of malevolence. So the subject is serious, noble charity, but I mess it up with the form. So it has to be consistent, it has to be both. Okay, in the subject and in the form. Okay, and perhaps even more important, the one thing the Spiritism does not dictate, does not impose anything upon us, period. But there is one thing that is the closest to an imposition, is the closest to a demand from Spiritism to us, is our ability of use our intelligence. When Kardec says, that's why truly high order spirits constantly recommend that we submit all communications to the control of reason and the strictest logic, primarily reason, even more than logic. Okay. Again, period. Spiritualism does not demand anything, but the highly spirits recommend. Look at the word that the Kardec put over here. They recommend. In my ignorance, I say, is something that is the closest to demand from us. Use your intelligence. Use your ability to reason. Otherwise, you are at very, very high risk of being taken to a bad ride. And why is that? Because although a communication may be serious in content, in subject, and form, it may not be right. It may not be correct what the Spirit is saying. The spirits may bring a false idea because they want to bring falsehood to us, or because he believes that that is the right thing. We see this in this book. When the Spirit was giving us informations to Kardec, and behind that Spirit there was Erastus at one communication, and behind all those spirits there was St. Louis and other communications, making corrections of what the Spirit was saying in a very, very serious communication. But that Spirit did not have all the facts together, did not know important things. And Erastus behind that Spirit to make the corrections. So in this book, we'd have what the truth and not what that Spirit was saying. So it's very important that we understand the communication may be serious. My aim may be erroneous. And here is where the truly high order spirits constantly recommend, and in my ignorance I say demands, that we submit all communications to the control of reason and strict logic. Reason more than logic, of course. Okay, to me, that is an absolute must. All right. Hence,
I think that's the hardest of all the four different communications, right?
by far.
Because the others are clear. This one, it's the harder because because when you are reading a serious message, then you need to analyze if it's a real one, or if it's, as they say, truly serious or erroneously serious, right? And again, it's just as Paco said, it's just us on the other side. So how many serious articles full of lies you read here in our daily press, right? People that are writing seriously believe, in most cases, of course, we're not talking about frivolous, believe in what they're writing, and they are completely misguided, wrong, or things like that, right? But so if we have trouble separating here amongst what we read amongst the incarnates from the discarnates, the same difficulty with the added degree of difficulty of not really knowing the source, right? Because here, if you read an article written by someone that you know their positions, you already know what you're going to expect in the article and the likelihood of having something not real there. But when you are receiving from unknown sources in the spiritual world, that even if they sign a known name, you don't really know if it's true or not, it becomes an added degree of difficulty, right?
That's right. And that's why we have to have high degree of suspicions. And that's why it's better to throw away 10 truths than to accept one lie. And that's why that we have to use all the little clues that we can pick up on the seriousness or on the being correct or not correct message. And that's what Kardec says. Hence, we must distinguish between communications that are truly serious from those who are erroneously serious, which is not always easy. Here you go. It's not always easy, and it may be extremely difficult. For due to the seriousness of the language, certain presumptuous or pseudo-scholarly spirits may attempt to impose the most wrong-headed ideas and the most absurd theories. In addition to render them more acceptable and lend them more importance, they have no scruples about adorning themselves with the most respectable, and even most venerated names. This is also extremely important, that if I want to sell my ideas to a group of individuals, and I came in and talk and say that this is Elmo talking. But if I want to sell my ideas, let's say, to a group of spiritists, and at the end I sign Bezerra de Menezes, that takes a completely different tone. People will be much more likely to pay attention and consider a communication that is signed by Bezerra de Menezes the one that is signed by Elmo de Fernandes. It may be absolutely the same one, the same content. I may change the words, and that's another important thing, to be able to get the content, the moral of the story, and not be so entertained with the words and things like that. Maybe the same, but one that is signed Elmo has no value. The one that is signed Bezerra de Menezes becomes valuable and correct. We need to be very careful, because I, spirit, when I come in and give a psychography, let's say, I don't bring my social security number with me. I don't have to prove who I am. You're going to figure out if it's Elmo Bezerra de Menezes by the quality, the more intellectual quality of the message, to the language, and for someone who can go more in depth, pick up messages from Bezerra de Menezes and make a comparison, the style, this and this and that. For any doubt, trash it. Again, it's better to throw away 10 truths than to keep one lie, which is also hard. Indeed, this is the problem, the difficulty, okay? It is a great obstacle that we practical spiritists face. Questions, comment?
Hey, Elmo.
Yes.
It's a tough one. Okay. So, at least from what I'm seeing so far, I might be mistaken. High order spirits, when they, not necessarily perfect spirit, but the spirits that direct meetings like serious mediumship meeting. They don't communicate all the time, being psychophony or psychopathy. They come, once in a while just to comfort, console, or give us the strength, whatever it is. But communications still happen on the meetings, being psychography or psychophony that might look serious, but we understand that they are not coming from high order spirits. So in which category we put those messages, either psychography or psychophony?
We need to do that exercise, that reasonable exercise, and evaluate the content of the message, the moral value of that message, primary moral value, because it's the nature of our work most of the time, right? Make sure there is nothing that there is no red flags on that make us suspicious to be erroneous or to be frivolous. If there's anything that's suspect to be erroneous or frivolous, you discard. And those who have value, moral value, it's coming from a good, serious spirit that may not necessarily be a higher spirit. But what's good is good. What have good moral value content has good moral value content coming from a higher spirit or not such a higher spirit. We have not read instructive yet, but perhaps that could be placed on the category of instructive. Or could be serious and truly serious good communication.
So if you have a psychograph and you read it, and people on the group read it and make sense to everyone, and they come to a sense that it is good, so we can assume that the message is good according to the best of the ability of that group to evaluate that message, right?
Or it's good to the best ability of that spirit to bring something good to us. What I'm saying is, let's get someone who don't had the opportunity, let's say, to go beyond elementary school. Okay. Someone who did not have the ability to expand its lexicon, is not able to use fancy good words, may even have problem with grammar, and is not able to write a 3-4 page without some mistakes and stuff like that. But when you read it, it's full of good moral value content. Is it possible that someone who has not much, did not have an opportunity to be educated here in our physical world incarnate ones, may be able to write a message that is good in moral value, may teach us something of moral quality? I'm asking.
Yeah.
So you give to that message its value. There is great moral value content here. I can do myself, well, maybe I can, maybe I cannot, make the corrections in the grammar, in the spelling or whatever, which I could not tell the truth. But the moral content is there. It has its value, it's good, it's serious, it may even be instructive. Even if it's lacking some intellectual qualities that required a few years of school bench that person did not have an opportunity to spend time at that school bench. It still has its value. And that's where reasoning and logic comes through. That you are able to pick up what's good in it, the same way that when Kardec in interview spirits he looks for what he can get out of that communication. Well, it's good in that. If it's from a spirit who grew up in the fields of France, just growing wheat and didn't get an opportunity to educate, you're not going to be able to have a conversation at the level, intellectual level of Kardec. But may be able to provide some great value moral teachings to Kardec. So that becomes an instructive communication. So if a spirit comes and give a communication to any one of us in the center, we have to do that. We have to grab what's good in it and say, this comes from a good spirit because of primarily the moral content in here. It's not frivolous. It has a purpose. It has a reason to be, and the reason is good. The purpose is good. So it is a serious communication, may even instructive.
And you were mentioning as well that it's hard to evaluate something when you don't know the author, let's say. It's something important to maybe over time. I understand that the most important thing is the message and the content and everything, but and in a degree of relevance, how important would be to moving forward to know who the author is.
Again, you go to a table with a bunch of papers with messages, and on top of the paper, on top of the message, there is just a paper that got with names on it. Okay, and the message underneath of that paper with names on it. And one of the name is Johnny Smith. The other name is Susan Smith. The other one is Bezerra de Menezes. The other one is St. Louis. The other, which one are you gonna go pick it up first? It's gonna be Johnny Smith. It's gonna be Susan Smith. It's gonna be Elmo, or it's gonna be Bezerra de Menezes or St. Louis.
Famous one.
You're gonna pick up the ones that you trust. There is something good there for you, right? So yes, we all gonna go for Bezerra de Menezes. You're gonna go for St. Louis. So name does matter. Now it's up to us to use our intelligence, use reason and reasonable logic to read and say, yes, this indeed comes from Bezerra, or no, I think this is suspicious. There's red flags over here that make me think that perhaps someone wrote the name Bezerra de Menezes over here, but it's not come from Bezerra de Menezes. This is up to us. But the name is significant. Okay? Or if you put Bezerra de Menezes in a spiritist group, let's say, in the Philippines, who never heard of Bezerra de Menezes, they will give no value to it. The name, not the mass, the name. But if there is a spirit of great value in the spiritist community in the Philippines, they'll go to that name because the name carry value. Unfortunately, it does. It's not unfortunately, by merit. It's a merit. Bezerra de Menezes developed the merit that when you see his name, you go for it. But the problem is, as André Luiz said that one time that they presented a communication they said it comes from him, and Chico Xavier asked André Luiz's spirit, and he answers us, there are many André Luiz out there. It is up to us to identify which message comes from André Luiz or not. After the discarnation of Chico Xavier in Brazil, there is many psychographies of André Luiz. Some of them you read the first page and say, uh-oh. Some of them you go to half of the book and then you say, uh-oh. So is André Luiz can only communicate through Chico Xavier, and now that Chico Xavier is back in the spiritual world, he cannot give communication anymore? No, absolutely not. But when you read the publications that gets coming from André Luiz, if you have already read André Luiz, you'll be able to see red flags that leads us to believe that perhaps this is a different André Luiz. But the name carries a value, for sure. And it's a merit of those persons who build the value to that name. It's up to us to be discreet.
And the last question, in your experience, a medium that has a psychograph medium, he will be working with different spirits and delivering different messages, or perhaps there will be like a few spirits that will be working with that medium and providing messages to be delivered and analyzing, so everyone can learn and benefit from it.
Well, we hope that that medium receive messages from many different spirits and not be exclusive for one only spirit. That's another big red flag right then and there, as a good indication of fascination by that medium. So yes, and the medium should not be concerned at the time of the psychography who is right. It just should write. The medium is there to be used exactly as a medium to deliver the message, and then we analyze the message. The medium should not be concerned or who is writing through me. Just write, and then we analyze.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm not gonna move forward to the next one. We'll finish that next week. Any more questions, any more comments? So again, if you learn nothing in this book, if anything is like in this book is meaningless, this is extremely important. That's why truly high order spirits constantly recommend that we submit all communications to the control of reason and strict logic. Please. And again, me, my ignorance, I take off the recommend and put demand. Okay, we can, if no more questions, let's make a final prayer.
To our blessed Jesus, our Father, our mentor, our spiritual benefactors, all that have contributed to our meeting here tonight. With gratitude and humbleness, we thank you for the importance of so much studies and understanding and in light for our learning. We thank you. We ask as we leave here today to continue throughout the week with our studies, and most important with our prayers for the enlightenment of all that are here and in the spiritual world. We ask, dear Father, that our prayers continue to send out for those that are going through so much heartaches and pain in this planet Earth, from both worlds, the spirit world and the physical world. May we continue to evolve, study, and give as much as we can to all that are around us. May God bless our families and all our loved ones. And continue throughout the week with our meetings, our studies, lectures, and all that are given to us. We are so grateful and we thank you for that. We thank you for the teachers who dedicated their lives, giving us all this enlightenment. We thank you. And we ask as we leave here today, may we continue with our prayers and return again next week. And with that in mind, we ask permission to close our meeting tonight. So be it.